original developers of Toontown Online. All right. Well, our panel of online folks, would you mind introducing yourselves to the crowd? I'm just going to pick Sean because he's first on the screen over here. So, Sean, take it away. Can you hear us, Sean? Oh, we're muted over here.
No, we're muted.
Oh my gosh, we were muted the whole time. Sorry. Well, everyone in the room just gave you a Toontastic welcome. You couldn't hear the cheers, but you could see them.
All right.
Yay!
Look at all that.
And I was just saying, would you all mind introducing yourselves and your role with Toontown Online? And I'm going to start with Sean because he's first on the screen here.
Oh my goodness! Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Sean Patton. I was first an intern at Walt Disney Imagineering with a lot of these fine folks on this call, and then a couple years later, I joined Mr. Jesse Schell at Schell Games, and we worked on Toontown Racing, and then I was the design director on Toontown Parties, and yeah, super thrilled to be here tonight.
All right, Jesse, what about you?
Yeah, hi. I was there at the beginning of Toontown and worked with folks to help get it off the ground. I was kind of design directing responsibilities at the beginning, and then later on helped add some of the features with Sean. So helped get it launched and then added some parts of it in the future.
All right. Joe, take it away.
Yeah, hey, I'm Joe Shockett. Let's see. Joined Disney with Jesse way back in the day in 96, 97. So I was there at the beginning. My role did a little of everything, but mostly, game development, programming, design, and yeah, left in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there.
All right. What about you, Ellen?
I was brought in April of 2003, right when the beta was launching, I believe, the second beta, I guess that would have been. And I was a community manager for several years and really tried to champion a ToonFest for many years before we got one. And I'm super excited that we're here. I did all the trading cards and I worked on printing the trading cards and sending them out to everyone and running all the contests and all the fun community stuff, and I'm really excited.
And speaking of contests, you reminded me, Ellen, a couple of you folks have been judging the Toonies, right?
Yeah.
So I know, Ellen, what category are you judging for the Toonies?
I am judging the video category, and I'm so excited.
Do we have any people in the room who entered the video category? All right, yeah, we've got a couple hands here. All right, and then Sean, what category were you judging?
Cake decorating. That's right, cake decorating right here. So a lot of excellent entries. Looked delicious. Wish I could have eaten them, but I just had to sort of get real hungry and then have dessert after I looked at them.
And Jesse, what about you?
I judged the limerick category.
All right. And then next, she hasn't introduced herself yet, but she is a Toonies judge as well. Bridget, how about you?
My name is Bridget Konopka, and I am judging the accessories competition. And I was an art director, and first I started out as an artist in 2003 and worked as an artist for a long time, and then was an associate art director. So.
All right.
Yeah.
And Mike, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Sure. My name's Mike Goslin. I was around at the very beginning. I helped pitch the game to the Disney management, convinced them to let us do it. And I think at the time I may have been the head of the studio, or I don't know. It was sort of a weird time. I eventually became the head of the studio, but at that time, I'm not sure if I was. So my role at that, if I wasn't, then my role would have been, I guess, I think I had a technical role. I was lead technical or something like that. I don't remember what my title was.
And Mike, I'm just gonna call out you did something quite famous on Toontown.
Oh, what was that?
There's a certain Toon task that you were personally responsible for.
Oh yeah. I wrote the little old man stuff. Everybody, I'm sure you guys all got to enjoy that. Those of
Everybody's favorite Toon task. Yeah, I remember the day you did that. It was hilarious.
That was me. Well, we had, because Joe had written the quest system, and then we had to like fill it all out, and so everybody took a neighborhood, and I got the burg, and I figured it needed to be pretty hard because it was the burg. It's like second to last neighborhood. So you're welcome, everybody.
All right, Regine, what about you? You mind introducing yourself?
Hello, I'm Reg. I was very early in my career when I started with the team. Met Ellen on my first day of work, and I can tell you honestly, every person on this call taught me something very interesting. But beyond that, I was with them for 4 years, and I did support, and I wrote, believe it or not, this is my favorite part, is I wrote top tunes. So all of the things that you guys were fishing and you were collecting jelly beans and you were trying to outdo each other, it happened because Roger kind of tossed a book on my desk and said, we need some leaderboards, but we don't have time to build them in game. What do you think you can do? And the answer was, oh, I'll try. So yeah, that's kind of, I think I owe my career to the people on this call. So thank you.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah, there were a lot of people, I think, expressing delight and fond memories as soon as you mentioned top tunes. So, and last but not least, I'm sorry, I have only talked to you online, so please let me know if I pronounce this wrong. Galledo, is that right?
Giedo, yeah.
Cool. Would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Yeah, hi, my name is Giedo John, and I joined the VR Studio in 2007, and I stayed until the last. And I was a programmer working on level editor, and I worked on the accessory system, then minimap, and things like that.
All right. Well, let's give one more hand for all of our awesome Toontown Online developers. And now, Jesse, I understand you've brought something special with you to this panel, something never before seen by Toontown fans.
It is true, and I was going to show some of that. So I was going to go through. I was going to tell some stories, and then when we get to the end of that, I'll unveil that. But as I was going through my notes, because Joey said, "Hey, can you tell some stories from the beginnings of Toontown?" And I said, "Sure." And to refresh my memory, I went and dug through some old files, and I was looking online at the files that are shared in the repository. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's some stuff that's missing. And I went and dug through my stuff, and I'm like, oh, what about the 2001 design document? And I realized that, that's never been shared out. And it has a bunch of things people have probably never seen. And the reason you've never seen them is because it has ideas that were proposed to be in the game, but just never ended up in the game. And so we'll take a look at some of those at the end of, after we talk about some of the beginnings.
All right, sounds good.
So a little suspense there for you.
Well, do you want to take us through, I guess, do you have anything prior to the design document you want to take us through for the beginnings? Or do you want to just
I was going to, before we do, I just, I thought I'd tell a couple stories. I just threw together some slides just to tell some of the tales of how Toontown began. And of course, now I'm with a bunch of people who are going to be like, that's not how it happened. What are you talking about? But that's okay. People can call me out when I'm making mistakes. But yeah, I thought I would just jump in, and if it's okay, I'll just tell some of the stories of how it all got kicked off. And then we can open it up to having some discussions and things. All right. So a long time ago in the mid-90s, there was this group called the Disney Virtual Reality Studio. And this group was formed in the early 90s with the express idea of putting virtual reality into the Disney theme parks. And there's a bunch of people in it. A number of them ended up working on Toontown, but this was kind of a picture of the original VR studio group. Most of what they ended up working on was Disney Quest. So some people remember Disney Quest fondly. That's excellent. A little secret, the very first project that the VR studio worked on was a Rocketeer VR experience. But that never really got off the ground, as it were. And instead, we ended up switching to working on an Aladdin experience. And the Aladdin's Magic Carpet had a few different versions, but this was kind of some pictures from the Disney Quest version. So the VR studio worked on this kind of groundbreaking virtual reality for Aladdin. And then we worked on this Hercules in the Underworld project that was at Disney Quest, which was this cave-based experience with Hercules. And then that got replaced with this Pirates of the Caribbean experience. And these were just all really cool and exciting. And we were all really glad to be working on this stuff. But once Disney Quest was built, it kind of created this kind of like, well, what are we going to do next? And one of the, hard realities of the Walt Disney Company is, if you're on a team that doesn't have anything to do, you might have a problem. You may not have a job in a few months. So you always got to make sure that, okay, what are we doing next? And we didn't know, because we were focused on VR and we were focused on theme parks, and that work was done. And we're all like, man, what a great team. We love working with each other. What are we going to work on? And this was about the time, by this time, it's the late 90s. The internet has shown up, right? Web browsers and things have shown up. And we start thinking about some other stuff we'd been doing. So one thing we'd done on the side was this thing called Toontag, which was, this was an experience we'd initially created just as an R&D experience, just to show, here's what a multiplayer game for kids online might be like, which sounds crazy now. Like, of course we know what that is, but back then that didn't exist. All the games that were online multiplayer games were kind of, really, big shoot 'em up things that nobody was thinking about for kids. And we wanted to show that, no, you could make a game that was a little more kid family friendly, that was multiplayer. And we'd made this just as a R&D demo. 4 people could play tag in this world. It doesn't seem like much now, but back then no one had ever made like a 3D version of Goofy or Donald. Like this was a bit groundbreaking at the time. And one of the most memorable days for me was when Roy Disney Jr., Roy E. Disney, came by in order to check it out. And it was really weird. Like I was on one side of the table, controlling Donald, and here's like Roy Disney Jr. playing Mickey on the other side of the table. And it was a very surreal moment. And then when it was done, I said, well, Roy, what did you think? And he said, I think it was keen. And we're like, all right, I guess that's about as good a compliment as you could get. Well, we built this just as a demo, and this turned into something because Disney Online had committed to build this thing called Disney's Internet Zone at Epcot Center. It was an installation, but they didn't know what they were going to put in it. And they were desperate to put something in it because they didn't really, it was kind of vague. And they saw the Toontown, the Toontag demo, and they said, could we put that in it? And so you can see there, this was an experience where 4 people would go on a stage and play this tag game, in Toontown with a kind of a live host. And you see 4 screens and this bigger screen showing the map. And that ran at Epcot for about 10 years. So we had done that, but that was like a tiny project. And it was like, we were still back to the question, well, what are we going to do next? And as we looked at all this internet stuff and we thought about how we'd done the Toontag thing, we realized that doing online games could be a great thing for us to do because we knew 3D, we were excited about online games, and this could be a possibility. So we put together this pitch that was all about the online theme park, because there was this whole problem of like raising money inside the Disney company. We knew how to go get $50,000 to do something. But to make like an online multiplayer game at the time, we're like, that's going to cost like $5 million. There wasn't a good way to get $5 million at the company, but we saw that there were ways to get like 50 or $100 million. And so we're like, well, we'll try and do that. So we came up with this pitch all about, we're going to make 10 or 20, I think we had like 20 MMOs. We're going to make 20 MMOs and we're going to glue them all together so you can jump from one to the other. And We had this big pitch. We're gonna have a Space Mountain MMO and a Toontown MMO and just about everything, every Disney property. We were kind of how we're gonna make all these different connected MMOs, and it would be the online theme park, right? The Hall of Presidents MMO. I don't even remember how that one worked. Mike, do you still have the deck from that? Because I can't find that anywhere.
I have it. It wasn't digital. It was in a binder. It was like,
yeah,
it was old school. Yeah,
it was just before people did PowerPoint very much. So it was like a paper deck. It was crazy. Anyway, so we didn't really think we could build 20 MMOs, but we knew if we pitched this, it was internet times, everyone would listen to us. So we did this and everyone was like, oh my God, they want to build like 20 MMOs and it's going to be a Disney. So everyone was listening to us. And as we pitched it and pitched it and pitched it and pitched it, eventually somebody said, well, no, we're not going to fund 20 of them, but we might do one. Well, how about you do one and we'll see how it goes? And really, that's all we wanted was to do one. So we're like, oh, I guess so. So of course, and when we're just going to do one, of course, we're going to do the best, most sensible one. And it was, before I get to that, what it was, we had to build this thing. I totally forgot. We have to build this thing. We built the Panda 3D engine because, nowadays you're making something, you'd use it in Unity or Unreal or something. Those things didn't exist back then. We had to make our own engine, the Panda 3D game engine. This was different. The stuff we'd been doing for Disney Quest was all on Silicon Graphics machines. And we knew that anything we built for the home was going to need to be on the PC. We need to build a new engine. So we took everything we learned from doing the Disney Quest stuff and built this new Panda 3D game engine. And what might surprise you is where the Panda 3D engine gets its name. Ostensibly, it stood for Platform Agnostic Network Display Architecture. But what had really happened was an executive came to the VR studio very frustrated. They were frustrated with us. All we wanted to work on was these 3D games, and he didn't think that was important. He thought that we should be working on web pages and using Java, and that's what's important. And we're like, we don't want to do that. We want to work on 3D games. We think that's what's important. And he said, no, the problem, your team is there. You're like a bunch of pandas. All you'll eat is bamboo. And you're going to die because all you eat is bamboo. You need to be more like rats. Rats eat anything. So you need to be less like pandas and more like rats. And so you think about that. And we're like, okay, we'll think about it. And it inspired us to make our new engine and call it the Panda 3D engine. And of course, we needed a file format for it. So we called that Bamboo. So you feed Bamboo into the Panda engine, and that's what made it go. So we built that engine, and at the same time, we're thinking about what should the game be. And obviously, the simplest, the most straightforward, best, most popular game for building an MMO about was going to be this, Atlantis. Believe it or not, this was the original plan. Was we weren't going to build Toontown. Of the 30 MMOs or whatever that we pitched, Atlantis was the one we were going to build. And the reason for that was the Atlantis movie wasn't out yet. And so many people inside Disney were convinced Atlantis was going to be a giant hit. This was going to be Disney's most successful animated film ever made. And this is going to be Disney's Indiana Jones. This is going to be this huge thing. And so everyone was talking about it, what a big hit it was going to be. And so when we went and pitched, this was in our deck of like, we're going to build an Atlantis MMO. And people were like, ooh, oh, that's going to be a big hit. Good idea. Good idea. So we actually built prototypes to some extent. We built some avatars. We had a whole pitch for how the whole thing was going to work. And then we once we got it to a certain point, we took it over to feature animation and said, we need to get your buy-in. We're going to do this Atlantis MMO. And they were like, ugh, we don't want you to be doing this. You're going to ruin our movie by making a game. It's gonna make people think that this is for kids. We don't want games in this. So no, you're forbidden. You can't make it. And we're like, oh well, all right. Well, let's go find something that nobody really cares about. And we did. It was Toontown Online. So Toontown was one of the ideas in our deck that we were the most excited about because we'd already built Toontag and we knew the feel of it. And we knew that it had Disney right in the center of it. And this picture is actually from one of the decks. What we did is we took this poster, which I think was a poster they used to sell. I don't remember. This was a poster I think they used to sell at Mickey's Toontown at Disneyland. And we just put the online part under it. And so talking about the inspirations for Toontown, in the beginning, like we were like, Toontown Online, it makes a lot of sense, of course. But what is it? And people may have seen this diagram before in the repository from one of the early design documents. This was an early experiment, just kind of exploring what could Toontown be about, because we hadn't really figured out what it was. And this was an early concept that we turned away from. But the concept was, we want Toontown to be a place where like the enemies are all the things kids hate. So we had like this school with like mean teachers, and this factory with like evil businessmen and pollution, and this city with like, I think you see list things like the dentist, and this neighborhood with a bunch of bullies, and you were gonna, the Toons were gonna fight against these things that kids hated. And as we talked about it, it's like, really, we're gonna tell kids that school is evil and like an evil dentist. It's like this might not be the smartest idea. But you'll see the evil businessman was kind of listed in two of these, and we're like, we kind of like that part of it. And so like this started to become the center of Toontown, the Toons versus these evil business people. And we realized there was this work versus play dynamic that we really liked, because not only was it fun and funny and it kind of made sense, but it was something that both parents and kids could relate to, because the conflict between work and play is something that kids and parents have to think about and deal with all the time. How much play is too much play? How much work is too much work? And it just was very natural. And so this kind of became the central idea in Toontown. Other influences for Toontown that were really important. One, we can't underestimate Mickey's Toontown at Disneyland and its presence there, because it's an interesting blend of the Roger Rabbit movie, which of course, that was the origin of the phrase Toontown. It was a blend of like the Roger Rabbit Toontown, and then also kind of Mickey's universe. And even the trolley, for people, some people may or may not know, the trolley in Toontown Online was based on the Jolly Trolley, which would run around in Disneyland. I also can't underestimate the importance of the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoons, which of course, Bugs Bunny is a direct inspiration for Roger Rabbit in a pretty clear way. And all the business with like dropping anvils and things, that's not stuff from Mickey cartoons. That's stuff more from Looney Tunes cartoons. So there was a lot of inspiration kind of coming from those. And another really important piece of inspiration that a lot of people don't realize is the Carl Barks universe. So Carl Barks was an early Disney artist who created Duckburg. And he primarily did this through the Uncle Scrooge comic books, which were he created this whole world of Duckburg. And of course, people today know it as the DuckTales universe, but DuckTales didn't make it up. DuckTales took it all from the Uncle Scrooge, Carl Barks universe, and then just kept carrying it forward. And the thing that was important for us was that was a world. Like the whole Duckburg wasn't just like a cartoon or a place. It was like a whole world where lots of different characters lived. And we kept saying to ourselves, the background characters in Duckburg, who weren't all ducks, there were a lot of characters of different types. We realized that that's what we want the people in Toontown to feel like. And some of it was actually quite direct, because you'll notice one thing when you look at this initial picture, which this was, I think, a Bruce Woodside picture, kind of just putting the concept together. One of the things you'll notice about the cog on the left is that cog is not a cog. That is not a robot. That's just a person. And originally, the cogs weren't cogs. They were just people, and we called them the suits. And that was the concept, the Toons versus the suits. And that ended one day when we had a visit from Roy Disney Jr. comes to the studio. He's like, hey, remember that Toontag? That was pretty great. What are you doing now? And we're like, check it out. It's Toontown. It's all about the tunes versus the suits and all that. And he's kind of like, huh, okay, interesting, I guess. And we're like, okay, well, that was a little weird. It wasn't the warmest meeting we ever had. And the next day, our vice president comes in very perturbed and says, we have a memo here from Roy Disney Jr. who says this game can never ship. Toontown can never ship because it is disrespectful to the people who made this company great. And we all like smacked ourselves in the head and realized, oh my God, Roy Disney Jr., well, his dad was Roy Disney Sr., who was the businessman who made Disney great. While Walt was the one doing all the creative stuff, Roy was the CEO of the Walt Disney Company for years and years, quietly in the background, making the company great. And here we are with this game saying business people are the evil enemy. And so our vice president's like, deal with this. You're going to have do something. I don't know what you're going to do, but do something. And we're like, oh my God, well, we can't, what are we going to do? We can't take them out of the game. And we're like, well, what if we started brainstorming? What if it's something else? What if it's aliens are the enemy? Now that's corny. What if it's robots are the enemy? We're like, well, maybe robots, but we really want the work versus play thing. And we're like, what if it's business robots? But we don't tell anybody that. So we wrote a letter back saying, we've changed it. The game is different now. It's going to be all about tunes versus robots. And they're like, okay, fine, whatever. And but we didn't tell them it was business robots. And honestly, the game got better at this point because we were never sure when you defeated a suit what was supposed to happen to them. Bruce Woodside had an original concept where when the suits got hit with too many pies, they would turn into clowns and then shrink really small and run away. And it was like some weird dream. And it was like, Bruce, that's interesting, but that's probably not right. And once we seized onto the cog idea of the robots, the business robots, it was like, oh, this makes more sense because they can explode and it's just more interesting anyway. And then it's like, where did these business robots come from? And we're like, oh, let's go to Duckburg and figure it out. So we brought in the idea that Gyro Gearloose invented them, and to help Uncle Scrooge, because Uncle Scrooge wanted to, he was frustrated that his businesses weren't more efficient. So Gyro's like, I'll help you out. I'll make business robots. And then the business robots want to take over Toontown because they think that's an efficient thing to do. So it was fun to kind of take the Duckburg characters and weave them in to the world of Toontown. And so I was thrilled because I grew up with Gyro Gearloose. He's one of my favorite characters, and to be able to use him in a story, and I could not have been more excited. Not too long ago, when they did the new DuckTales show, there was an episode where Gyro's looking at his notebook, and look what's in his notebook. Like, he has the cogs in his notebook. And I love this idea that he had them on the good list and crossed them off and realized, oops, that was an accident, and puts them on the evil list. But the whole idea that we created something that is now part of the Carl Barks Duckburg universe and in Gyro Gearloose's world, is just something I was very excited about. Anyway, I just wanted to tell just a couple more quick stories about origins, unexpected origins of certain things in Toontown. One of them are the knock-knock doors, which are so cute and fun. But why are they there? Why did we put them there? They don't really serve any gameplay purpose. They showed up because initially, when we were making the towns, I remember this was a discussion with Felipe Lara, making the kind of prototype neighborhoods. There were all these doors to make the town look like a normal town. Like, of course, there's doors on buildings. And then, of course, people would run up, how do I open it? And we're like, we can't open all these doors. We can't afford to make all these interiors. It's too expensive. I'm like, Felipe, get these out of here. We can't open them. Take the doors away. So he's like, okay, I'll take the doors away. Takes the doors away. And now the town looks super weird. It's just all these walls, right? We had an occasional door, but like walls and walls and walls and walls. We're like, ugh, that looks terrible. We can't have doors you don't open. We can't have doors you do open. What are we going to do? And somebody came up with the idea of like, well, what if you knock on them and they tell a joke and that's it? And we're like, oh, yeah, of course, people want to interact. They don't need to necessarily go in. And we're like, knock jokes are cheap. So like we can do that. So that's how that idea came about. Another one, here's a Mike Goslin thing here, talking about Little Oldman. Some people may not realize the origin of the name of this character. There was a Mel Brooks movie called High Anxiety, who has this funny character played by Howard Morris, who's kind of a funny character actor. I think Howard Morris is the gopher in Winnie the Pooh, actually, as a matter of fact, but he plays a lot of interesting characters. And he plays a character in this named Professor Lil Omen. And the joke is everyone always calls him, oh, are you Professor Lil Old Man? And he's like, it's not Lil Old Man, it's Lil Omen. It's just this, I don't know. And we thought this character was funny, and Mike was kind of riffing on that. So there's like part of the secret origin of Lil Oldman was in the Mel Brooks movie. Another unexpected origin is secret friends, the whole system by which you can kind of establish friends with somebody and type messages back and forth. This came from an idea of it from another Disney game called Disney Girlfriends. And Disney Girlfriends was this game where if you had it and your friend had it, you could play multiplayer online games together by connecting your modems, I think, or something. I don't remember how it worked, but you would connect one friend to another friend, and it worked by you'd request the secret code from the game, and then and you'd tell it to your friend, and then they'd type that secret code, and then the system would connect you together. And it was a way that kids could be online but be safe because they'd requested these secret codes. And we're like, we were really looking for ways to keep kids safe online. And we're like, that's pretty smart. Disney Girlfriends as a product was kind of crazy silly because what are the chances that it's a multiplayer game that you buy in the store and you can only play with your friends who have it? It's like selling one walkie-talkie. Like, what are you doing? So it didn't really do very well as a product, but that was a smart idea, and we borrowed that idea for the Secret Friends system, and worked very well. And then the last little story to talk about would be the origin of the trading cards and the newsletters. This was I know Joe and I were very passionate about this as a concept. We kept thinking about like, oh, we want this to feel like a club and kids are part of the club. Wouldn't it be cool if as soon as you joined and you paid that you start getting stuff in the mail and you really feel like you were part of this club? And we were excited. It was going to be stickers. And I think was the original concept was all about stickers. And we go to marketing and we're like, yeah, we want to do this. It's going to be great. And they're like, wait, you're saying this game where kids pay $6 a month, what are we gonna spend $1 a month mailing this out? We're just gonna give them that for free, like a free $1 a month. You're gonna do that. That's the plan. And we're like, yeah. And they're like, no, this is a business. What are you talking about? We can't just give away $1 a month to everybody. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Get out of here with that. And we were kind of bummed. And then we're like, well, maybe we need to think about it from their point of view because, it is kind of a lot of money. $1 a month. It's not nothing. And we were thinking about, well, what do they really care about? And as we thought about it and talked about it more, we realized the way the marketing people thought about it is they thought about what does it cost to get someone to, how much do they need to spend on advertising to get someone to buy a subscription? And then once they bought the subscription, we want to keep them as long as possible. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. So like they're expecting the subscription lasts a certain period of time. And we're like, we think that if you get this in the mail, it's going to make the subscription last longer. So we went back to them and said, okay. We're not here to tell you about how cool it is. We're here to talk about a terrible moment. The moment a subscription gets canceled. And they're like, what are you talking about? We're like, okay, we're going to talk about when a subscription gets canceled. Here's how a Toontown subscription is going to get canceled. A parent is alone at night the kids have gone to bed and they're paying the bills and they're going through the credit card and they're like, what? $6 a month? What? Am I still paying this? Does my kid even play this? I don't know if they do. I'm going to cancel this. That's when this happens. And that's when it's going to happen. Now, imagine that there's a universe where we send a mailer once a month. What happens when kids get a piece of mail? And the marketing people are like, well, kids love getting mail. They'll be excited. I'm like, right. And it's a piece of mail from Disney. Now, what's going to happen? You just created a moment where the parents are going to get this thing in the mail, hand it to the kid, and they're going to see the kid be like, oh, awesome. That's amazing. You can't tell me that that's not going to make the subscription last 2 extra months. And they're like, oh my God, it probably would last 2 extra months. I'm like, right. So if the average subscription is 6 months, how much does this cost us to do? They're like, oh, that's like $6. And I'm like, what if we extend it by 2 more months? They're like, wait, so it costs us $6, 2 more months, that'll cost us $8, but we'll make $12. And I'm like, right. They're like, we can't afford not to do this. Right. And it totally worked and we got it off the ground. And I will add that the trading cards were very special to me personally, because after I left Disney and the way Schell Games started was Mike was like, hey, we need someone to write these trading cards. Do you have time to do that? And I'm like, yeah. And I ended up starting Schell Games initially as a consultancy where my job was writing all the text on the backs of the trading cards. So the Toontown trading cards were actually at the very beginning of Schell Games. There you go. So the last one I'll just mention is I mentioned I wrote a lot of the stuff on the trading cards. And so these were always very special to me. And the juggling cubes, juggling has always been a hobby of mine. And I used to actually be a professional juggler. And like one of the ones I just love pointing at is, the little joke on the back here, Jeff and Jesse's jocular juggling cubes. Jeff was my best friend growing up, and the two of us always juggled together. And we were roommates in college, and we started the college juggling club. And so it was nice to be able to kind of sneak that in there as a little tribute to a friend of mine. There you go. Anyway, that's the end of my slides right there. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. And now, so we don't have a lot of time to dive into it deeply, but you mentioned that there's this 2001 design document, right?
Yes, you're right.
Any quick things you want to say about that?
Yeah, I know we don't have time to go into too deeply, but let me just pop it up for 1 second and I could show you a little glimpse of it before it kind of goes up online. I'll just give you just a quick peek at it here because I know we want to get to the Q&A as soon as we can. Right there. This is probably it right there. All right, so there it is, Toontown design document version 2.6. And it's got a lot of interesting things in it. First of all, it's longer than any of the design documents that the other ones. This one has 116 pages long, so it definitely has a lot more stuff. And just a couple interesting surprises that are in it. Let's see. I don't know. I can find some stuff real quick. Oh, yeah. Stuff about the hotel room, which was one of the original Toontown concepts. And there were some other things. There's something in here about the trade. Oh, there it is. The trade interface that we were going to use to trade back and forth. And then I know farther in here is the original, a lot of the original minigame concepts, some of which just never happened. And those I think people will have fun poking through. Oh, yeah, there are some descriptions of some of the lands that never got built, like Goofy Stadium and a few of these others. But so you can have fun poking through and learning about the cheese shop minigame that never happened, or like the Cannon game was originally called Boomatoon. I don't know why we didn't keep that. That's a better name. And also fun in here is you can kind of see there are some comments from some of the other Imagineers about these. I think a number of these are actually from Daniel Osheim here. Anyway, so there's a lot of fun stuff you can dig through here, and people should have fun checking that out, I think.
Yeah, so we'll be getting this uploaded to the Toontown Preservation Project later this weekend. You'll be able to access it by going to toontown.online. And yeah, thank you so much, Jesse, for digging up this piece of history for us.
Good thing. So Joey, I'm going to stop the screen share, okay?
Yeah, go ahead. You're free to kill the screen share.
All right.
All right. So let's just dive right into questions, since I know we don't have a ton of time with you all. But I wanted to start by actually directing a question towards Ellen, because Ellen, as you mentioned, you had a big role in the original ToonFest, and so now we have all these people here celebrating 20 years of Toontown at ToonFest 2023, and I kind of just wanted to hear from you. How did the first ToonFest come to be? What was that like? The process of getting Toontown Online players in person together. Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
Before I came to Disney, I worked for StarTrek.com, and I would go to Star Trek conventions and talk to fans there and take photos of them and put them on the official site. So the minute I loaded up Toontown and saw it, that's when the original ToonFest idea popped in my head. We have to get these people in their costumes of their characters together somehow, someday. It took several years of other events that marketing. We worked in conjunction with Disney Channel. They were very, very clear that if we were doing any kind of event, it needed to have a lot of presence in marketing channels like Disney. Disney Channel would run an interstitial covering our event if it was featuring enough Disney Channel folks. So the Grand Prix we did, and we did something else. We did a charity event that was very focused on Disney Channel stars, and we had a few contests so people could come to those events, but it wasn't really about the fans. It wasn't until 2006 that I think we had finally gotten enough momentum and the fan sites were exploding and there was enough interest that we had convinced them that we should do a proper ToonFest. So the first one was on the studio lot in 2006, and then the following year we did Fantasia Gardens at Walt Disney World in conjunction with the launch of Acorn Acres. So it was like a golfing themed event, and those were some of the most exciting, events I've been to. It was so thrilling watching everyone come together and put their costumes on and just, tune out together.
Awesome. And do you happen to have any advice for, we're just kicking off ToonFest. We got 3 more days of it here. Do you have any advice for fans to make the most of their weekend at ToonFest?
This is where I'm going to cry because I'm just so excited that the fans are still fanning. And that you all are together and, be excellent to each other and, give everyone, jelly beans and hugs and tune-ups all over the place. Yay, thank you. And just be your awesome, amazing Toon selves. Thanks for being the best, easiest community to manage really ever. Because you're all so great.
All right, so we'll move away from Ellen over to now, Reg. I understand that you also had an interesting role to play in the Toontown community. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you provided support for some of the international versions of the game. Is that right?
Oh, they sent me away to go launch them. It was awesome. So each of our international versions were actually launched via partners. So I'm trying to remember the name. So I think we had, I want to say one of them was Telefonica, one of them was Orange, pulling here. But so we launched it in the UK. We launched, which, believe it or not, you're like, wait a minute, the UK, that's also English, but there's a whole nother culture over there, folks. We launched it in Spain. We launched it in France. I believe we had the Philippines. We had Toontown Japan. We had all of these different cultures. And back in the day, it was like, okay, just translate the game and off you go. And Toontown didn't do it that way. And that's what made it so special. They made it so that it was culturally relevant. So we had Bastille Day when they were having different holidays there. We were very aware of the cultural differences. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the times it was American holidays first. But when you were launching the actual game, they made it culturally relevant to the players. So it wasn't just about like accept the American culture and off you go. It was make it unique to them. And you found that you had a lot of people. The other fun part is quick chat. It translated for you. So you didn't have to speak the other person's language. You just chatted between each other and you could have a conversation with someone who didn't remotely speak your language. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people. I now live in the UK, which probably came from that first trip that you guys sent me over there. So thanks for that as well. It's just going to be a love fest for me today. But knowing all of these different, thanks, Ellen. But knowing all of these different things, we had to provide support to these players. So it was making sure that we provided not just, hey, I've got this thing that's broken, but also, hey, that localization isn't quite right, or hey, that's slightly offensive. Can you please fix it for us? And those building out that team is actually what I did. So anyway, I'm not sure if that's where you wanted to go with the question, but that's where I've taken you.
You perfectly answered it. The question was going to be one from Gigi, just a special shout out to them, who is one of our community members who asked just what went into supporting all that. I think you totally covered it. And actually, I know there's some people in the room here who have traveled from other countries to come to ToonFest. Do you all want to raise your hand in the audience here? We got a couple in the back.
Where you at?
There's a couple around the room here. I think we tracked, how long was the longest flight to come here? 22 hours. Someone's traveled 22 hours to come to ToonFest.
Thank you.
And I think that is in large part thanks to your work in supporting the international community with Toontown. Now, I'll move to another one for Sean, actually. So, Sean, you mentioned you started working on Toontown as an intern. You later sort of moved up into Goofy Speedway, eventually design directing for parties. What was that like, I guess, like, going out from so early in your career, working on the game in these different roles? And do you also happen to have any advice for, say, aspiring game developers looking to get an internship on something like Toontown?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was great. I mean, I went out to Walt Disney Imagineering not really knowing what to expect. I think there were 3 of us that were going out from my graduate school, and we were working on different things. But I was working with Jesse and Joe and Mike and Roger and those guys, and I think you guys put me to work on some tune maker stuff, like sort of revamping some of that, and then on this, I graduated to some work on some mini games, Match Mini and things like that. But it was just wild to doing Python and doing, you're like, here's a game that people don't say, they say it's not very good. Can you make it better? It's like, maybe. And it was just, you threw me right in there. You treated me as part of the team, and it was just awesome. And I think, that's something we definitely try to do at Schell Games. Like, we put our interns on, important parts of the game. And it's like, hey, that's the best way you're going to learn. And you get treated as part of the team, and it was awesome. And so, yeah, when Jesse was a great boss, then he was a great professor, and I guess I must have made a good impression because he called me up later. But but yeah, I was very fortunate in my career path, and I think that as far as advice to folks, work on projects with your friends. You can use the same engines we use, right? Unity and Unreal. You can download those. You can make projects with your friends. You can put them up on your website. And I know, at least when we're hiring folks at Schell Games, right, we're looking at, is this person really excited about game development? And, do they enjoy it? Is it something they enjoy? Is it something they can work on with other folks? Can they collaborate? Can they speak the different languages? Designer, engineer, artist, right? And, yeah, it's just do the global game jam every year from Sri Lanka to Hawaii. Hundreds of game developers working on thousands of games. Get some stuff up in your portfolio. Talk about the game that you made. What worked, what didn't. Can you analyze it? Can you see what worked? Can you describe why it didn't work and what you'd change if you had more time? These are all the things that I learned and that we look for. So and have some fun out there.
Speaking of fun, Sean, we have a game of yours at the Toontown booth. Do you want to tell anyone about it?
Yeah, no. So Joey is very nice, and he was explaining how you guys are gonna have Toontown themed board games. I was like, I make board games. And Tin Spin is I think the game that's there, and it's the first ever game to use dice spinning as a mechanic. Because why roll dice when you can spin them? Am I right? Jesse's got a copy. So yeah, Tin Spin is a fun game, and yeah, you should totally play some Tin Spin. Check it out online. And yeah, super excited. And I think it's going to be one of the prizes for at least the cake decorating contest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. The winner of the cake decorating contest will get their own copy of Tin Spin. This panel has also been brought to you by Tin Spin. So
I don't have that kind of budget.
I'll send you a bill, Sean. Don't worry.
Quick Tin Spin trivia. That's actually a game that Sean made in my game design class when he was one of my students. What was that, Sean? 20 years ago?
20 years ago.
Yeah.
21 years ago.
Right. See, he'd done it as an assignment in class, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. And he's like, maybe I'll do something with it one day. And a few years ago, Sean's like, I'm actually going to take this to Kickstarter. So things that start out as a simple student project can turn into a real product if you want to.
Jesse wrote a quote on the Kickstarter. It was like, I've been waiting for this game for 20 years. It's all true, baby.
So we've got another community question here, this time for Bridget. This is from Derp Kirby, who said, when creating new accessories and clothes for Toons, which I know, Bridget, you did quite a bit of, were there any significant rules you had to follow to fit the game's art style? And do you have any examples that you'd be willing to share about it?
I think at the very beginning, when I first started, we were trying to stick pretty close to the original design of, like the Warner Brothers style and the original Toon design. But then we wanted to make, and I also wanted to make more and more outfits for the Toons. And the original ones, they were just a little boring, I mean, they're all right to dress your avatar up, but then you want something, kind of stylish and kind of cool. So as long as we stuck to kind of bright colors and kind of a toony feel, we kind of pushed it more in that direction. And I think I can remember like one of the things that was a little like iffy at the beginning was I made a tie-dye shirt. And I know some people were like, I don't know about the tie-dye shirt. That's like not in this realm. Like, I don't know. But then luckily we will let it go through. And I think it was pretty popular. So that was one example of kind of pushing it more towards just like the fun, wacky side and not really being stuck to the old, 1940s or whatever cartoon look. So, yeah.
Awesome. And another thing about the Toonie Awards, the winner of the accessory design contest that Bridget is judging will have their item actually put into Toontown Rewritten as an item that you'll be able to use. So you'll be able to say that, the original accessory creator for all sorts of different Toon accessories has approved your design.
Yay, I'm excited for that.
Bridget, you also used to help judge the fan art contests as well, and you would help take those designs and put them in the game back then as well.
That's true. I did that for the game. So we'd also get together and decide which ones were the best. And I know Ellen sifted through a bunch as well. And yeah, that was super fun to do. And I think people really liked getting their artwork in the game. And then I would paint it up and we put it in. So.
Yeah, it was just recently. Someone in the community had spoken up that they were one of the designers of a shirt that you all had judged and put into the game, and they had the original scan of it. I think it was the fishing shirt. The watermelon shirt. The watermelon shirt.
I remember that shirt.
So yeah, it was the watermelon shirt. They're still a member of the Toontown community.
I remember that one too.
I think they said they were brought to tears or something when they learned that their shirt was being put into the game. So it's just a testament to the impact that you all have had through just supporting this community.
That's awesome.
Now I want to pose a question to Gaeto. I believe you have the unique perspective here as being one of maybe the only developer here who was with Toontown all the way to the very end in 2013. And so just as someone who was there in some of those later days, I guess what was it like on the team? How do you think it differed from the earlier days of the project? And were there any things that you didn't really get to finish or complete that you were hoping to before the game closed?
That's the thing. Actually, I asked them about how honest I can go with this question, and then everyone said you can go.
Yeah.
So it was like Disney. Actually, their attention was actually moved on to another project at the time. So they are pulling up people from this project, and then almost at the end, we are only one engineer working on this game. So which was not me. It was Justin. So it became down to 3 of us, and then 2 of us, and then only one person working on both Toontown and Pirates at the same time. Then they just put it away. So it was really sad days. Actually, I remember that earlier days we were all like, VR Studio have our own culture. We are working really together in very funny ways, and then that whole culture is kind of gone, and then we became more like cogs in a way, and then they finally pulled the plug up. But luckily, Toons resist and then rewritten the history. I'm so loved to watch all this Toontown rewritten becomes alive.
And so what was your reaction when you heard for the first time that, like, you know, the fans were going to try and bring Toontown back? Was it?
My first reaction was, is it even possible?
That was ours.
You don't know about this?
Awesome. And, you know, speaking of the other projects, Mike, I believe you not only oversaw Toontown at one point, but also Fairies and Pirates Online, World of Cars Online, maybe. So what was it like, I guess? How did Toontown pave the way for those other Disney MMOs? And is there any like lessons that you learned from Toontown that were put into those other games later on?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of got back to the original idea of the online theme park. We had pitched, we're going to do 20 of these. And when Toontown worked, and this crazy thing about Toontown is they told me I needed a business model to get funding for the project. And we didn't have any business people on our team. We were a studio, we had animators and, engineers. We didn't have any business people. So I got into Excel and I made a spreadsheet, and I had some help from some people like, hey, what do you think that this is going to cost? And we built this model, and I don't know how it happened, but it was spot on. Like we hit exactly the revenue numbers that we had put in this model, this crazy model that we just cooked up. And so the result of that is they thought we were just geniuses about this business. And so they let us do whatever we want. There was a period of time where we could just say, all right, we're going to do this game and here's what it's going to do. And they were like, okay, fine, here you go. Here's the, back the money truck up and start making these games. So we learned a couple things. One is the, figuring out all the safety and the chat. And by the way, you guys are the best community ever. But despite that, there was still a lot of stuff going on that we had to kind of police. And so that was a big learning. And as we expanded to these other games, we were able to use the same system. I'll tell you one kind of funny story. So the bad word filter started with me and Greg Wiotrowski. We went out and bought some beer, and we just sat down and started coming up with all the most profane things we could think of. And that was the beginning of the bad list. And it eventually grew to be in, I think, something like 10 different languages. I mean, it was like a massive thing. And I think we were the first ones really to do that.
It was so much bigger than that, Mike. Matt took it over at some point and created an algorithm that took Dante's Inferno and figured out what series of phrases in 5-word chunks the likelihood you would find them in that book. And then based on that ratio, that's how much we knew whether this was a bad phrase or a bad conversation to flag. And all of that was in every language we were supporting. It was, yeah, it was so impressive for the time. And now I look at what we're doing today and I'm still like, Matt built a better one. Cause it was just, it's just unreal. And yeah, but Toons on the whole were a wholesome bunch. We were very lucky. Sorry, Mike, I didn't want to interrupt you there, but it was so much bigger than just the original profanity list.
Yeah, I think that's the theme here, is like everything we started, you know, with this kind of small team in one room turned into this massive business. We had, you know, I think five of these at one point, all going at the same time. Globally, we were in all these places, and we had this great map. Somebody took a Google map and put a pin for every live player on it, and it was just amazing to see that thing. We were covering the whole planet, and you could see when people were coming on. You know, like there's this like wave after the kids go to bed. There's this wave of adults would sign in. Like that's when we knew we were really onto something. Is when, you know, they would tell us that there were multiple players per household. So our subscription numbers weren't really the story. It was really, you know, how many people in the house were playing together. And a lot of times it was the parent was one of the primary players. So yeah, we learned a ton. We used it in all the other games, but each one was a little different. They were, you know, trying to go after different audiences. I think we overreached with Pirates. We tried to like do this thing that was so huge that we almost killed the team trying to build it. Yeah, no, it really was the online theme park for a while. We kind of got about, you know, a good chunk into the original plan, largely because Toontown worked so well. Oh yeah, Gato, the OTP server. So we even tried to build a metaverse where you could have Toons and Pirates hanging out together, and that was kind of wild. And I had it running on my computer, and we would bring execs in and show them, and they're like, "What is this? What on earth? This will never fly. You'll never be able to get approval for this." But
that was it was part of the original online theme park pitch. I think we called it the Vista Viewer or some crazy thing where you could go between the worlds, and then later we're like, that's a terrible idea.
It sure was cool to walk around, and
yeah,
you know, it's kind of like this backstage kind of idea. And there was, you know, you could just walk from one. It was really like a theme park. You could walk from one area to the other and run into all the different kinds of characters. That's the nice thing about doing it all in Panda. It was all the same engine, so we could cross over like that.
So we've got a couple other community questions here that I'll try and do a little bit of a round robin for. First, there's two community questions that I know a lot of people in here are wondering. Specifically, these are coming from someone named Speedster and someone named Darth M. And I'm going to start with Joe for this. But Joe, if you don't know, feel free to pass it to anyone maybe brave enough to answer. There were a couple urban legends of Toontown before the game closed that went unanswered. For example, there was the Cog Nation crates in Cashbot headquarters, which everyone's always sort of speculated, like, is there some giant Cog headquarters out there called Cog Nation? I don't know. Is there anything you can say about that, of what your discussions were internally?
I do remember we were trying to build Cog headquarters for every track of Cogs. I do remember that. Those were added late in the game. I worked on a couple of them, designed a couple of them. But boy, I'll have to pass it to Gato. Do you remember this lore, Gato? Because that might have been after my time, or Jesse. Yeah.
Cog Nation, I do not. I've seen the crate. I don't know who put that there or what they were thinking.
Yeah. Well, so another one that is the chairman of the Cogs, and so when you defeat the CEO, he says the chairman's not going to like this as he's defeated. And we never met the chairman in Toontown. Were there any discussions of what the chairman might be?
One thing I'm reminded of is when you do world design, there's this concept of distant mountains. that Tolkien talks about. You don't just design the things in front of you that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, the characters. You also design, things you may never get to, you may get to someday. And so I think the chairman was one of those that, like, we might get to him someday, but I don't remember ever any design docs or anything specific. Does anyone else?
Well, Joe, now that you say that, I happen to have a design doc right
You have a
here.
different mountain? Yeah.
Is there a board of directors potentially at some point?
We had discussed this rescue of Scrooge McDuck was actually in the design document at one point, where I don't know if we called them the chairman back then. You can tell we're deep in the design document. It's all TBD, 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 TBD. We don't know what any of this is. But there was this whole idea of Scrooge McDuck held hostage by a giant robot, and fighting this giant robot in a climactic final battle. And there was a little map of Scrooge McDuck's vault and how it's connected in. We talk about defeating the head cog. But like you say, this was pretty vague.
Yeah, I think even in the best virtual world design, you don't want to design everything up front. You want the community to come along the ride, and you want the community to tell you what they're enjoying, what they're not enjoying, where you should spend your time. So you can drop little crumbs like that and see who bites, and then chase it.
And so the last urban legend that I have here is the under construction tunnel in Acorn Acres. And so when Chippendale's Acorn Acres was added, there was a tunnel with a construction barrier that remained under construction until the day the game closed. Do any of you have thoughts, ideas, maybe designs of what that might have been?
I remember a few. There was a stadium. There was a black and white.
There was a black and white neighborhood. Yeah.
Black and white neighborhood. Jesse, you know I'm going to bring up the Vortex neighborhood.
Oh my God! I thought I was the only one who remembered that. Did we have a name for it? It was like upside down something. I don't even know. But it was meant to be a playground where. So it was supposed to be like really weird where gravity didn't make sense. And in the center of the playground, the ground came up into a pillar, and then the pillar extended onto the ceiling. And so that you could like walk right up the wall and then be walking around on the ceiling. So in the playground, there would be Toons walking on the floor, and also this playground would have a ceiling, and they'd be walking around up there. And David Rose told us to get lost, that he could never make the gravity work that way in Toontown. And we're like,
This was 15 years before Inception, right?
Yes. No, that's all true. But I did like that Acorn Acres under construction gateway. That didn't happen. Like that was after I had stepped away. And was the idea to add another neighborhood? Do you guys know at that point?
Yeah, I think we wanted to add another. I don't remember which one we were going to put there though. Greg might know. He'd be a good person to ask.
Okay. It's funny. Nobody seems to. I've talked to Greg. I've talked to Felipe. I get different stories. There was something about someone was saying, there was a golf course, a mini golf was going to go back there. I don't know. Like, I've heard so many different stories about what that was going to be. So it's.
Yeah, I thought it was mini golf, and we were talking about mini golf and skiing and like all sorts of things like that. But I don't know.
What did it cost?
I feel like I remember making the sign that goes there.
So mini golf did end up in the game. Mini golf was
going
in there.
behind the sign.
But I think there was the skiing one is interesting. 'Cause Sean, I don't know if you have any memory of this. I know I've seen at Schell Games before there was Toon parties. There was Toon ice skating. Do you remember that?
I do, because we were we were playing a lot of SSX Tricky around that time, if I remember correctly, and we were like, this game's great. And so there was talks of getting that sort of pulling tricks and like doing cool moves as Toons. And so Kyle Kenworthy was an extremely talented animator at the time at Schell, did some like here are some tricks, and we were all very excited about it. And then there were issues and development issues. Why I never saw the light of day, but yeah, it was definitely there was a lot of SSX Tricky being played at lunch in that time period.
And I happen to have a design document right here that talks about how skating is going to be integrated into the Berg, how you walk on the ice and suddenly you'll have ice physics.
That was pre us then.
That was a long time ago.
There you go. Ice skating, it's destined someday.
So we only have just 3 minutes until I think Momocon's going to give us the boot from this room, but I'm just going to open this up to a question for any or all of you. This is a question from Super Bubbles Boing and Boing, who said, "What is your fondest memory of working on Toontown Online?" Anyone want to start with that? Feel free to use the Google Meet raise hand. Oh yeah, Ellen, go for it.
Just the ToonFest, getting to interact with the community face to face was always the best part. You know, it's one thing to read all of your messages and emails and hang out on the fan sites, but getting to actually talk to people who love this game and want to be together is the best.
I can tell you my favorite memory by far, and that was the day that Toontown Rewritten opened. Because the thing I want to make clear about part of what made Toontown special was it had a bunch of people working on it who'd been working on Disney theme park stuff. And working on that, we didn't think like normal video games, which is like, oh, the game's going to come out next Christmas and it'll be popular for 6 months. We thought about, we're going to build this and we want it to be up for 20 years. We want people to be playing this 20 years from now. And 10 years later, when Disney decided to close it, it was a super dark day, and we were all really sad. It was incredibly depressing for all of us because our vision of this game being here in 20 years, 30 years, it ended that day. And except that you guys saved Toontown. So thanks.
I know that's a hard one to top. Does anyone else have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I'll add one. I mean, this happens maybe once a year or thereabouts. I'll run into somebody who I'll have, I don't know, they'll either recognize me or I'll have something associated with Toontown, and they'll come up and say, hey, that was my childhood. Like that's what I did. I grew up in that game, and like it never gets old. I mean, when people tell you like they've spent time and it was something that really had an impact on them, like that always makes me just it's so humbling, like just to have that kind of ability to impact so many people. I mean, and it happens all the time. Even still, I've run into people and just so many people feel so strongly about something that we work so hard on, and it's just a great feeling. I'm sure you guys get that too now. I mean, it's this thing is just going to keep going.
Yeah, no, it's the players. I remember when Joey asked Jesse and I to speak at the ToonFest in Pittsburgh, and we were like, we got there and we were like rock stars, and we're like, do we deserve this? Like, it was just like, right. So yeah, I think it's just really awesome what the Toontown Rewritten folks have done to keep this magic alive, and for everyone who's playing it. It's great. It's amazing. 20 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's give it here a round of applause.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joey.
Yeah.
You all are amazing. We're so happy that you've been a part of ToonFest. I know some of you will be stopping by later on for the Toonie Awards, so we'll see a couple of you again. But again, thanks for being here. A special surprise for everyone in this room. We have the 2020 ToonFest posters that we never got to give out that you can take on your way out. Thanks again, everyone. Yes, thanks again, everyone. Have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow for another day at ToonFest.